Welcome to the Approach podcast. I'm Cassidy Gates, founder of The Approach. This is a place where curiosity comes first. Together we explore the science of behavior, communication, somatic practices, consciousness, leadership, and the patterns that shape how we think, speak, and live. At The Approach, we believe the body primes, words cast, actions create. We thank you for listening. Now let's begin today's conversation. This is Cassidy with The Approach. Today I have a guest, Jim Marshall, with me, and I have my co-host, Chris. And Jim, you were writing a book about Septemics. Now I was interested because I noticed that actually septum means seven in Latin. What's the relation to seven?
Septemics comprises a collection of scales or sequences, each of which has 7 levels.
So like 7 times 7?
Well, so you have these 35 scales, and each of them has 7 levels.
Got it.
That's why I call it Septemics. So the basic action of this is finding either your level or someone else's level. And when you do, you have an insight about the person. So, you're always selecting from a menu of 7, which is not a hard thing to do. Because I did the heavy lifting of reducing human phenomena to 7 levels across 35 axes. People keep telling me that I covered everything. And since nobody has contradicted that, I kind of assume that's correct at this point.
Well, I'm not here to dispute you on that. That's extremely interesting. The idea that, I don't like the idea that we can put humans in a box, but I also live in reality and have noticed myself that people seem to act in kind of familiar ways. And if you see one pattern in one spot, you'll start to see the others in the other spots. Is that kind of the phenomenon that you're talking about in the book?
Well, somewhat. You have to understand this is natural law. I come from a hard science background. I'm an engineer. So I simply observed these phenomena and wrote them down over a 40-year period. And so I've been working with this material first in the discovery phase and then in the engineering phase, now in the promotional phase, most of my life. So I know this material very well. And these scales are natural law in the same way that Newton's 3 laws of motion are natural law, in the same way that the Fibonacci sequence is natural law. And that's what motivated me to share this with the world, because I knew these patterns were there and I was working with them. But when I figured out that it was mathematical, that these scales are mathematical, that's when I said, whoa, this is something people can use. Because anything that's natural law is intuitive. It's not like if you look at the Pythagorean theorem, it doesn't take long to see, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. So when people first contact Septemics, like a guy sees a book in a bookstore, what's this Septemics? She opens it up, and it doesn't matter what chapter he looks at. He's going to think something like, oh, this makes sense. And the reason for that is it's natural law.
Can you give us an example?
Of what?
One of the categories or one of the boxes.
Okay, so let me tell you the names of the 35 scales so you'll know exactly what subject matter is addressed. And each of these is parsed into 7 layers, okay?
Oh, can we hit the pause button real quick? I have a more base question before we get there. That's a great question. My more basic question is just, I appreciate the natural law aspect of it, and I totally subscribe to everything that you're saying. Can you tell me how it is that you came to it being natural law? What was the science that you performed?
Be happy to tell you. It's a long answer, but I'll be happy to tell you. You want me to answer the other question first or this one first?
Let's go with this one and then
Okay.
the next one because it's
Okay, so the
sequential.
story really begins when I was accepted into engineering school at age 16. Now, of course, I thought at the time that I was going to be engineering physical things such as airfoils and motors and electrons, as did all the other students. But by the time I had my bachelor's degree, a lot had happened, and it became clear to me that I wanted to engineer the human psyche because it is the area of greatest mystery, of greatest unknown, and more importantly, it is the area in which we as a race are failing miserably. 95% of the problems in industrialized society are because people don't understand people, don't understand the spouse, don't understand the child, don't understand the parent, don't understand the boss, don't understand the employee. This is a huge problem that everybody has, and Septemics solves that problem across 35 axes. Meaning, for any set of facts, you have 35 ways you could come at it to resolve it. So, to make a long story short, I had a long career as a human development engineer to attain higher levels of equanimity, responsibility, mental clarity, spirituality, whatever the person was looking for. And all my clients improved as a result of our interaction. And incidentally, I started to notice that I could predict the outcome of the session. I never told that to anyone, but I made notes for 40 years. And I would see that the client was at a certain level, as this is observable, at a certain level on a certain scale. I wouldn't say anything about it. And then we would work, and he would go up to the next level on that scale. And that happened maybe 8 or 9,000 times over a 40-year period. Plus, also, when I would go outside the session, I would see the exact same phenomenon in life, like two people talking at Walmart. I could see they're at these levels. They don't even know me. So
that's a great segue into what are the levels. So can you give us an example?
I didn't answer your question yet.
Okay, perfect.
I didn't even get to Septemics yet. So I'm working with my clients, and the fact that I could predict this suggested that there must be something predictable underneath this that I don't know about. That thing turned out to be Septemics many years later. So by 1995, I had simply observed and recorded 32 scales just based on watching my clients and seeing them progress up these levels step by step. So around that same time, I had a difficult client who I was trying to place on a particular scale, which was a 6-level scale, and I couldn't find where she was on that scale. This went on for some time. It's the first time this had ever happened to me. Then I realized, wait a minute, this scale has a 7th level. The reason that level was not on the scale is I had never observed that phenomenon before, and there are specific technical reasons why that is that I could explain if you want. But as soon as I saw what it was, I understood the client perfectly, retroactively and going forward, and I knew exactly where to insert it into the 6th-level scale, thus making it a 7-level scale. When it became a 7-level scale, at that moment, it went from being a line, which is what a scale is, to a plane, meaning a whole body of data. So all of these data jumped out at me that I wasn't even looking for. All of these interlocking, intersecting, interacting mathematical phenomena supporting this scale presented themselves. Now, I should tell you, having taken 26 semesters of math and loved every minute of it, math is a very real thing to me. Now, to everybody in the science and engineering and math community, we're all like that.
So what I'm hearing is with that last one, that completed the box because you observed the 7th level.
Yes, but
is
you
it
realize
would it be possible that there's still more levels to go since we're constantly changing and evolving?
Well, first of all, I don't think our changing or evolving has anything to do with these scales. any more than it would with the periodic table of elements. I mean, no matter how much we evolve and change, hydrogen is always going to be 1, helium is always going to be 2, lithium is always going to be 3. That's just the periodic table. That's what this is like. I didn't really get to the discovery yet because you see, I looked at this thing and I said, whoa, I went to school for 28 years and I never saw anything like this. I wonder how many of these other scales might be 7-level scales that hadn't been developed all the way like this one. So knowing what I was looking for, I now inspected all the other scales. And in a short period of time, each of them went to 7 levels, and when it did, it manifest mathematically. So now I suddenly had 32 7-level scales, each of which corresponded to a particular area of human phenomena, which I'll get to in a minute, what those areas are, and each of which had math embedded in it. I said, whoa, this looks like a new subject to me. And I thought, this could really help people if I give them this data, because I had been using this for decades and I knew how useful it was. So I'm going to have to write a book because then I can present it to people. So the first draft of the book was finished in December of 95. And I then sent it in transcript form to colleagues of mine, each of whom had a graduate degree in some subject. And they all loved it. They had different responses, but it was a very positive response. And that told me that this was what I thought it was, which is a new subject that people would get. You know what I mean by that is, that was 30 and a half years ago that happened, where I sent it out to the colleagues and got a response. In all of those years, I've been presenting this to all kinds of people. People get it. They get it. They look at it and say, yeah, I see. It's not hard to get because it's natural law. So I then spent the next 25 years of my life writing the book. Because first I had to discover the phenomena, and I pretty much explained already how that was done, although I did find 3 more scales as I was actually doing the writing. Then I had to take that data and use it to craft a workable philosophic system. So now we're going from science to engineering. Now, in the world of engineering, you are never allowed to say, whoops. You can't just have the plane fall out of the sky and say, I didn't get that one right. Right? That doesn't go in engineering. Everything is very carefully, rigorously cross-referenced with factors of error to make sure it's right all the time for everybody. And all of the calculations that are done, which is a big thing in creating something in engineering, it's all based on this idea that it has to work all the time for every person. That took 20 years to get that, where it worked all the time for every person, every scale. So then you have to realize the most time-consuming part of this was expressing this in a way that would make sense to the average reader of English. Because you have to realize, in the world of science, that's not usual. I mean, when Einstein presented his theories of relativity in 1905 and 1915, he didn't present it to the general public. He presented it to physicists and mathematicians. They're the only people who understood his paper. What are the subjects addressed in the book? Of the 35 scales, 24 of them are individual scales and 11 of them are group scales. These are the individual scales: the scale of memory, the scale of spirituality, the scale of mental deletion, the scale of justification, the scale of belief, the scale of equanimity, the scale of attack, the scale of conflict, and the scale of reaction. And any one of these scales by itself could dramatically improve the life of the reader. But you're not limited to one, you have 35. Let's say you're dating somebody for 3 months and you're thinking about getting married. Now, wouldn't it make sense to ask, why does this person want to marry me? I mean, isn't that a reasonable question? I'm not saying ask the person. I'm saying look in the book. Because she wants to marry me because she loves me. That's level 1. Let's set the date. Maybe that doesn't happen. Maybe what happens is to say, now that I thought about this, I think This person wants to marry me because I drive a Lamborghini, I have a 60-foot yacht, I fly my own Learjet, I have a $15 million condo, and I have $10 million in the bank. See, that's a different motivation. That's level 4 money. And this book solves that problem because it gives you a way to analyze people. The subtitle of the book is Analysis, Prediction, and Management of Human Affairs.
So I'm not an expert, but so this is like profiling. So profiling someone. Um, is there anywhere in your book where it actually has you do it to yourself?
Oh, yeah,
Maybe.
you can just as easily do it to yourself as with others. A guy meets a girl in a bar, and the next day he sees her in daylight, and he says, she didn't look like that in the bar last night, you know? He didn't have a clear image. So this is like 35 lenses, each of which enables you to see the person more clearly, whether it's yourself or another. And that's really valuable because that enables you to separate the wheat from the chaff. So if you spot somebody who's at or near the bottom of these scales, run for your life. Those are the people who cause all the trouble. So let's say you have some guy, he's a professional criminal, a gang member, a drug dealer, a murderer. He is going to be at or near the bottom of all of these scales. Not necessarily at level 7, maybe level 6, depends on the scale. That's why he's like that. If he were not at the bottom of these scales, he'd go to college and get a degree and become an accountant or a lawyer or something. So this gives you an opportunity to see the high-skilled people and the low-skilled people in a way that's not opinion, it's not intuition. It's just like saying, this is a chrysanthemum and this is a rose. Now, of course, every chrysanthemum in the world is unique. Every rose in the world is unique. But I can always tell them apart. I can always tell a chrysanthemum from a rose, and you probably can too. And that's what this is like, except it's for people. So we were talking about the kid in the garden, and he says, these are pretty and they smell nice, right? That's all he knows. That's why we have to protect children. They're not allowed to make certain choices and things like that because they don't know what they're doing. So you have a guy, right? Adult guy, has a job. Friday, he puts on his best suit. He goes to a nice bar to meet a young lady. And he sees an attractive young lady. He buys her a drink, right? And he's thinking to himself, boy, she's pretty and she smells nice. That's the same thing the little kid just said. That's enough for this guy to get her number. God help him. He doesn't know what he's getting himself into. Now, if he knew these scales, just in talking to her, he would be able to spot her on some of these scales. Right there in the bar. He goes, oh, I can see that she's at level 4 on the scale of basic purposes. See, that tells you quite a bit. That tells you 100 things about this person from being at that level. You don't tell the person, it's only for you. So this is very user-friendly and went out of my way to make this easy for people to use.
How'd you do that? Because it sounds complicated as all get out.
Well, let me put it this way. If you study Newton's 3 laws of motion, it's not hard to get. First semester physics, they teach it to you. Now, figuring it out was the hard part. In other words, Newton was a genius, and he figured out the 3 laws of motion. Why did nobody else get it before him? We can get into a whole discussion about that. But figuring it out is one thing, and using it is another thing, because all of the astrophysicists and rocket ship engineers use Newton's 3 laws of motion to make calculations. It works. 400 years later. So what I'm saying is, as far as explaining where it came from, why it works, how it's natural law, none of that really has anything to do with how you use it. The way you use it is this. Let's say you have a mother-in-law and she drives you nuts. She's always saying You should wear a tie for dinner, and you shouldn't eat ice cream for this, that type of person. So you say, boy, I wonder where she is on the scale of control. So there's a scale. You look at it, see, and you know her pretty well by now. And you go down those, and you go, oh, I see where she is. Now you've got her pegged. You know exactly what is going on with her, with specificity. So when she gets into this routine, you know exactly what's going on. It's not going to bother you because you
Oh, I don't know
understand it.
about that.
So I hate to
Well,
interrupt.
how long have you been using
You know
Septemics?
you know what's causing it. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying you have a clarity on the situation. There's no vagueness
So,
about it.
and you said you developed or discovered this method?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have one that I worked on, and it has to do with 7, and it follows the 7 sins. So with that shadow side, usually pride and stuff goes off, not feeling worthy.
Uh-huh.
Is it similar to those? You're just scaling people based off underlining issues or maybe their primitive brain?
Well, first of all, let me say this. There is no theory of Septemics. I just saw what was there and wrote it down, which is what any engineer would do. You do a test on a car, right? You say, on this fuel, you got 4 miles per gallon more than on this fuel. You write that down. That's data. So that's what I did. I just saw this and I wrote it down. And of course, as this went forward, it became clearer and clearer and clearer to me. It emerged in my mind as a subject. And I told you about the moment when I had that 6-level scale that went into a 7-level scale. That's when the light went on over my head. Whoa, I found something here, and it's natural law because it's got mathematics embedded in it. So if you read the book, you'll see each of these scales is expressed in what you could call a table or a spreadsheet. Now, that table is very similar to the periodic table of elements. But instead of it being for matter, it's for these 35 corresponding areas. So, for example, the scale of thought. The scale of thought has a periodic table. So not only do you get the 7 levels of human thought in the right sequence, but you get different aspects that interlock about it, why it's that way, what are we really looking at here? Because simply having the scales is not enough. When you look at this, you get a whole table of understanding. And you probably know that when Mendeleev invented the periodic table, there had been chemistry for hundreds of years, but he revolutionized it because he made it easier to understand, easier to teach, easier to learn. And so everybody in the world uses his table now, even though we keep adding elements. Well, the fact that we can keep adding elements just validates the table. It's a workable paradigm. So this is something that I saw work for a long period of time. And there are people all over the world using this now. And it's actually very easy to do. You just have to study the scale and look at the person. If you don't have data on the person, you're not going to get anywhere. You have to have enough data. For example, when Obama ran for president, I had no idea who he was. And I'm pretty sure most of the people in the country were like that because he was only in the Senate for 2 years. So I thought, well, this guy's running for president. I better find out who this guy is. So I conducted a septemic analysis of him. And I was able to determine his basic purpose. You see, people tell you their levels. It comes right out of their mouths. If you just shut up and
What's his purpose?
Oh, I can't tell you that. I tell everybody, never tell anyone the level of any living person on any scale. To do so is unethical and counterproductive.
But
Now,
also, everybody is looking through a different lens, so how is what they're seeing going to match up to anybody else's?
okay, every person in the world who can see can look at a chrysanthemum and say, oh, this is a chrysanthemum. Yeah, I see it. It's not like a tulip. It's not like a rose. And they know what a chrysanthemum is. So that's botany.
Okay, what if
the
about
same
people
thing.
that go to an art gallery? They're all looking at something, but they're interpreting the meaning in different ways.
Right. So that's fine, but I'm just giving you the data. In other words, take something like human ability. There are 7 levels of human ability. And
Where
knowing
are
that,
they?
let me see if I can remember them. From the bottom, it's, let me just open the book.
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
I wouldn't want to misspeak.
No, I wish I had a copy in front of me to do it.
Right. Okay. So the lowest level, level 7, is ignoramus.
And this is on
This is
this is on what scale?
the level of human ability.
Okay, ignoramus. Got it.
That person doesn't know that he doesn't know.
Okay.
Up from that, level 6 is a layman, a consumer. He sort of knows that he doesn't know. You know, he has just sort of a general idea about enough that he could buy the product. He's not completely ignorant of it. You know, there's a person who says, "Jiu-jitsu, what's that? Some kind of sushi?" See, he's an ignoramus. He has no idea. He doesn't even know what question to ask. And then up from layman is amateur. Now, an amateur, he's into this field. See, he has some ability, and he's somebody who you could call him a dilettante in that area. He's not a pro yet. See, and 4 is competent. Well, competent is what a professional is. When you get to be competent, you can be a professional, meaning you can be paid for this thing. A 3 is expert. An expert is a master. He knows more than a person at level 4 who's merely competent. Up from that, a 2 is a virtuoso. Virtuoso is a very rare, unusual specimen who knows a lot more than the experts. And the top is genius, which is unique.
Mm-hmm.
But
So,
what's their level of like? What are they being judged on? Just on each thing?
human ability. See, this is actually very important if you're going to hire somebody. If you're going to put a
It's a
guy in a
great way to
job,
profile.
you don't want him to be an ignoramus. You don't want him to be a layman. Now, if he's an amateur, well, you can at least talk to him about it. But you
Well,
really want somebody who's competent. Wait, let me finish.
so
Do you want an expert? Probably not, because if he's an expert, he's going to be telling you how to run your business. And do you want a virtuoso? You probably won't even be able to get him to work for you. And a genius is on his own. He's like Shakespeare was a genius. So we have the word Shakespearean. When your name becomes an adjective, you're a genius. So this is really useful as far as hiring people. Human resources, because this is something I really use in the business because I've been in business my whole life, one way or another. And I would know that, well, these guys have the same ability, but this guy is going to fit in. And that's the one that I hire. So there is such a thing as being overqualified for a position. If you want somebody who's just going to produce, that's a professional. You don't want an expert. Because the expert twice a day is going to come into your office and say, you know, I have a better way to do this. That's not really what you want. If you want somebody to be a manager or an advisor, then you get the expert. So in other words, you have to kind of fit the person, you know,
In a box.
square
Yeah.
person,
You just put
fit
them in
the
a box.
person to the position. If you get a genius, he's worth his weight in gold, but you can't fit him. You have to build an organization around him, which happens all the time. When you have somebody who's a genius, an organization manifests below him. So, like, look at the word Shakespearean. How many thousands of entities come under that heading? Shakespearean festivals, Shakespearean plays, Shakespearean actors, right? It all comes from Shakespeare, the genius. There's never been anybody close to him. So these are pretty rare people. Obviously, Einstein was a genius, completely changed the world of physics. I don't know if you understand the theory of relativity, but it completely changes the whole understanding of everything in the material universe. So,
Reality's an illusion.
so he's somebody who didn't really fit in these other places, you know. So you have to spot the person, and you have to know what you're looking for. For example, the best client, the best customer is an amateur. If you go to a baseball game or a football game, you'll find that most of the guys in that stadium play football. High school football, college football, some kind of organized. They're amateurs, right? They can't get into the NFL. They can never get in because they're not big enough, not fast enough, whatever. And that's the guy who goes out for $100 and buys a jacket that says Giants or whatever team, Green Bay. You know, he's a good customer. He's an amateur. So if you go down to most stores and you see people sort of shopping carefully, you'll see they know a lot about that thing because they're amateurs. When they become pros, it flips around and they get money from it instead of giving money to it. So you asked, so those are the 7 levels.
Well,
course,
so
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Cass.
You go ahead.
No, I just had a question. It seems to me that this is subjective, and I say that only because somebody can be an ignoramus in one moment and also be an expert in another moment, and then be an amateur in the same moment. It just depends on the question and the circumstance and the situation. So it seems like you're making a lot of judgments about people, and although that it seems like it's a useful tool to make assessments on people at the on a surface level, I'm struggling with it's like I said, it seems subjective because I work with a lot of people, right? And I don't need Septemic. I'm sorry. I don't need that system to be able to realize when somebody's not in it for the right reasons, right? The example that I really want to ask you about, which may be able to help me understand it, is, I don't have a great, I'm not having a great relation.
Is there something you can do about this?
Him freezing? Not on my end.
Okay. Well, since he's frozen, why don't we talk?
Writing,
okay.
Thinking.
Okay. Yeah, you had been frozen, but now you're back.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
Okay, what last thing you heard?
So let me address your concern. You have to understand, I'm an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
There's no subjectivity in engineering. It's all objective. The formula for the volume of a sphere is this, period. And if you disagree, you're wrong. That's what science is about, okay? The acceleration of gravity near the surface of the Earth is 9.8 meters per second squared. That's what it is. You don't have to take my word for it. You can take a stopwatch and a golf ball and go out and calculate it yourself. But you're going to get that same number.
Well, but that's not as far as I understand. That's not how the system works. You have 7 levels that are subjective characteristics that you're making a judgment on in the moment with a person, and at any given moment, you have to keep 7 times 35 different levels in your mind, depending on the situation.
Well, you're doing a very good job of making this complicated when it's actually quite simple.
Well, it sounds complicated, but I haven't read it, and I'm very interested in reading it. So please.
That's why it's a book.
Right.
And so what I was saying is, coming from a hard science background, the reason I was able to help my clients, I used Socratic dialogue with biofeedback. I never asked a question unless it had been suggested to me previously by electronic manifestations, because I know how to read biofeedback. So I could see in the biofeedback that this guy had a secret from his mother. So I would ask him, "Do you have a secret from your mother?" He'd say, "Yeah, I do. Tell me about it." And so you see, that would accelerate the whole process. So to me, it's all about engineering. In other words, I don't think anybody gives a damn what I think about anything. And I would rarely even tell somebody what I think, even when they ask me. Like if sometimes a client would say, "Well, do you think I should stay with this woman?" I'd say, "Well, what do you think?" I'm not going to answer any questions like that. So I simply observed these phenomena and wrote them down. It's just like if you say to me, there's this creature here, and it's got these little hairs that come out like this, and it's got fur, it's got a tail, and it's got four legs, and it says meow, meow. I'm going to say, well, that's a cat. See, now we have a label for it. Oh, cat. Yeah, there's lots of them. They're different colors, but yeah, they all act very similar. That's kind of what this is about. In other words, you can see a phenomenon in the way the person acts. Give you an example. I have somebody I know who said to me several times, gratuitously, "All men are beasts." Now, that right away, I know that person is on the scale of thought is at level 5. Level 5 is thinking in identities. People sometimes think in identities. Now, you can't argue that person out of that. There's no way you're going to argue that person out of that because the person thinks in identities. So now you could move the person from 5 up to 4, and then the person would think by association rather than by identity, which is much preferable. But for example, if you want to be a scientist or an engineer or a mathematician, you have to be at level 3 on that scale, period. Well, that's analytical thinking. If you can't think analytically, you can't have that job. It's like a 300-pound jockey. There's no such thing. So all of this I simply observed and recorded. And then I thought, well, people could use this. And that's what people have been telling me for years and years now. Like people say, "Yeah, this really helped me. It helped me sort out this and figure out that." And of course, I use it all the time with people for better or worse. And it's as far from subjective that anything could possibly be. In other words, when I see a cat, I say, "Yeah, that's a cat." Now, 10 minutes later, I'll see a different cat. Never saw that cat before, but I can still figure out that it's a cat. It's this subcategory, cat. So it's the same thing. So that is what
I'm going to push back on you a little bit if you don't mind, because
Yeah.
again, the kind of example we were working with was the human ability one,
Uh-huh.
and level 7 was ignoramus, right?
Yes.
And I'm not saying that like if you have a crowd of people, you maybe I don't know how you're going to be able to pick out the ignoramus, right?
I'll tell
Because
you.
again, if you ask them questions, there's a lot of people out there that are good at stuff that you're not good at, and
Right.
they might not have a lot of money and they might not be very smart and they might not even have a very high IQ, but they figure it out somehow. So I don't know if that really qualifies as ignoramus.
So let me give you an example. Okay. I am an ignoramus on an infinitude of subjects. If you ask me, what is the atmosphere like on some planet in another galaxy? I don't know. I have no idea. I have no data. I'm an ignoramus. Or if you ask me something more remote, like, tell me about Bulgarian folk music. I don't know anything about Bulgarian folk music. See, I don't even know that I don't know.
Right.
Sometimes somebody will talk to me about something and say, "What's that?" And then they explain it to me.
And
So
then, but hold
all
on. Now you're not an ignoramus anymore. You've now automatically jumped to amateur because somebody gave you the information. So again, it's a very subjective and fluid experience. It seems like.
well, their level changes. People's levels change. So what you expect that when you send your kid to school, The kid is an ignoramus about almost everything. But then he learns how to spell, how to write, how to speak English. He learns grammar. He's coming up these levels, which is what you want. Now, maybe he comes up fast on English and not so fast on math. So, that's how most of us are. But you have to realize this is narrow. For example, Einstein was a genius in the subject of physics. But if you ask him about baseball, I'll bet he didn't know a damn thing about baseball. He probably didn't even know who Babe Ruth was. So in baseball, he's an ignoramus. So you have these different areas. And you see, you can use that to your benefit. For example, I have a guy who works on my car. He is an expert. He works on $1 million cars, racing cars, okay? And this guy, I do not let anyone else near my car but this guy. I have complete faith in him. I've been doing business with him about 8 years. He's honest as the day is long. Anything wrong with my car, I contact him first. He fixes it, I pay him. So he is an expert. Now, where is he on the scale of thought? I don't know. Is that important? No. What's important to me is he's an expert on auto mechanics.
Well, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about human ability, right?
Yes, human ability.
Well, but hold on. Is your mechanic an ignoramus or is he an expert? Because
on
he's
the,
an
sub,
he's
on the
expert
subject of automotive mechanics, he's an expert.
right.
Now, maybe if I try to discuss the writings of Oswald Spengler with him, he might be an ignoramus on that. But that's not important because I'm not discussing Spengler with this guy. I'm just having him fix my car. I'm very happy having this guy fix my car. He's an expert in that thing. So I'm sort of telling you how to use this.
Mm-hmm.
So he doesn't have to be literate. There's a scale of literacy. I don't know how literate he is or isn't, but it's not relevant. So, you sort of have a person who has a certain function in your life. Like everybody has good points and bad points, and you sort of have to sort of fit the situation to the person. But I tell you,
so you're judging them based off relativity, like what you're looking for, what quality you're judging that quality.
well, see, basically the way this works is you have some area of life, some scenario, right? And you assess it in that gap. In other words, if there's something wrong with my car, there are people who know more about cars than I do, and I'm going to go to them to get my car fixed. So I'm maybe an amateur in automobiles, but I want to take it to an expert, not a professional. That's level 4. An expert is level 3. He's going to, there are mechanics who you drive the car and they listen to it. They say, I know what's wrong with it. Pick it up at 3 o'clock tomorrow. So it depends. We are all at different levels in different contexts. So this is what I call a specific scale. In other words, in what context? So for example, you might say that a really good example of this is Bill Clinton, because everybody knows who he is. In his area of profession, he was an expert, probably. Now, I'm just saying that in a general sense. I'm not assigning a level, but everybody knows he's a smart man. He got elected president from an obscure state. He got reelected. Even his opponents and his enemies admit he's a very smart man. However, if you were to say to me, Bill Clinton's coming over, would you like to talk to him? I said, yeah, I would be right there. And I would ask him about these various things that he knows about, because I've listened to him speak and he really knows what he's talking about. Now, if I had a girlfriend, or I don't mean like a romantic girlfriend, of a friend who was a girl or a sister or a daughter, I would say to them, don't go out with Bill Clinton because everybody knows he's a serial abuser of women. So those are two very different things. So this is true The general condition for people in Septemics is that some people are high on one scale and low on another scale. That is normal.
Okay, so to clarify though, you're saying it's objective.
It's what?
Objective.
Yes, it's objective.
So it's not subject to change based off the person using the material.
Well, you can advance yourself. See, once
I mean,
you know,
but hang on, let me rephrase. When they're categorizing somebody else, it's based off their perception. So would it not be subjective based off their use? What are they measuring with besides their own perception?
well, all measurements are by perception. I mean, if you look at a watch or a scale, it's some perception involved in measuring anything. But I'm giving you a system by which to do it that is based on natural law. I didn't publish this because I thought it was right. I published it because it hit me over the head repetitively for 40 years that this is what's going on with people. And I guess I could have kept it to myself, which is sort of the way my life was before the books came out, because I had this enormous advantage over everybody because I knew this material. I'll give you an example. I'm a single guy. So about a year ago, I met this gorgeous blonde. She looked like a movie star. So we were very interested in one another initially, and we're having the usual conversations that people have at the beginning of a relationship, like what kind of restaurants do you like? What's your work schedule like? What kind of TV shows do you watch? There's a lot of that in the beginning. So as we're having these conversations, I noticed, not all at once, but in different conversations, oh, she's low on this scale. Okay, she's low on that scale. Oh, she's low on that scale. By the time I saw that she was low on 3 scales, I said, wait a minute. What this material tells me, having been using it for decades, is that I barely know this person, and I've already figured out that she's low on 3 scales. What that means is, when I get to know her well, I'm going to find that she's low on 10 or 12 or 15 or 18 scales. And that's not somebody I'm going to associate with, because as
And
I
that's
pointed out,
100%. You would say that would be 100% accurate about that person.
yes, in my
People
hands,
don't So people don't adjust their levels based around who they're around? Some people don't put on a mask every now and then,
well,
play a little bit dumber?
you can try to disguise it, and of course that happens. But once you know this, it's pretty hard to disguise. But let me finish the story about this woman, right? So I
Absolutely.
realized that she was going to be a lot of trouble to me. We didn't have any bad words. We didn't have a disagreement. There was no insulting. It was all very nice, sort of on the way to having a relationship. But I could see that she was low on some of these scales, and as I said, I could sort of extrapolate that I was going to find she was low on many scales, and that's not somebody I'm going to get involved with. So the next time I saw her, and I got to tell you, she looked like a movie star. I said to her, you're a lovely person, but yes. She was shocked. You know why she was shocked? I was probably the first guy that did that to her. There was nothing negative going on between us. I could just see that she was going to be a big pain in the ass. And I didn't want to deal with that. So it didn't matter to me that she looked like Lana Turner. That's too bad. But think about
Well,
this.
I think that happens for a lot of people, and they just choose to move forward anyway. Like
Yeah,
they know that like people accept the poor treatment, and they still continue to.
uh-huh.
I mean, I know lots of people like that. In fact,
Yeah. So think about this. With this story I just told you about this very real person who I met. Think about all the money I saved in $100 dinners that I didn't buy taking her out on dates.
yeah,
Think about all the time I saved myself going on dates with somebody for a relationship that was not going to go anywhere. Think about all the aggravation I saved myself, because when you have a relationship go bad, it's always aggravating. So I saved myself all of that, went right past it, and went to the next person. And but it can work positive or negative. Sometimes I meet somebody and I say, "Oh, this person is high in this scale, and high in this scale, and high in this scale. I'm in. Let's do it." Whatever it is, business deal or whatever. So, it helps you to find the upscale people and helps you find the downscale people. Now, let me give you an example. Adolf Hitler was at level 7 on the scale of basic purposes. The objective of a person at level 7 on that scale is destruction. When I figured that out, I was able to understand what went on in World War II much better because he made 6 or 8 catastrophic mistakes in running his military, which I, knowing military science, could see this is preposterous. Why is he doing this? Well, when I found out that he was a destructive person, then I understood he wasn't just destructive to the Allies, he was destructive to the Wehrmacht, he was destructive to his own officers, he was destructive to his family. So that's what you get from somebody like that. You get a train wreck. Pol Pot is another person.
Yeah,
So
but you could see that he was a train wreck without it.
yeah,
Like, I mean,
30,
being on
37
copious amounts of meth is a huge problem. You know what I mean?
37% of the German electorate voted for the Nazis in 1933.
Yes.
And the reason for that is they didn't have this book. If they had this book, they would have said,
That's not true. That's not true. That's not true at all. They voted for him for very specific reasons. And it had to do with the fact that they were in a depression and he promised them to get them out of the depression. He promised them prosperity. I mean, he promised them everything that a normal politician promises them. And that's
And
why they voted for him.
on that scale, they're functioning from survival, so their choices isn't going to be on a high level. They just want safety and security.
well, all of that is very speculative. But the point is,
Subjective, you might say.
the point is that uh, before I knew that he was at level 7 on the scale of basic purposes, I had a hard time understanding World War II. Why would he do this? Why would he do this? What that makes no sense. What then when I realized he was destructive, then it made sense to me. Or for example, a person at level 5, which I call a loser. A loser is not somebody who's doing badly. Anybody could be doing badly. It's a person who sabotages himself. This is the type of guy, if you give him 50 grand, he'll blow it in Vegas. If you give him a car, he'll crash it. If you give him a house, he'll burn it down. This guy is sabotaging himself. And I'm sure you've met some people like this. I had a client once who was in a terrible relationship. I sort of came in and did some work with him, and we made some progress, and then he went back to her. And I realized years later that he was at that level and he was going to sabotage himself. There was no reason for him to do that. This was a handsome, successful, smart guy. There's a million women who wanted to marry him. But he went back to this crazy woman who wrecked his life. So that's because that is how he sabotaged himself. Some people do it with drugs. Some people do it by overeating. Some people do it with alcohol. So that's what people do at that level. So if you spot that somebody's at level 5, don't think you're going to straighten them out. You're not. They intend to suffer. And I realize that makes no sense to most people because it's nutty, but that is who they are. So if you spot somebody at that level, don't think you're going to come in like a social worker and straighten out their life. Doesn't matter how smart you are, because their intent is to suffer. They make themselves suffer. And this really explains a lot about people who are sort of in that category. Once you understand that, oh, he's at level 5. Okay, well, that's a shame.
So
Now
he can't transcend level 5.
He could move to level 4. Yes, that is a possibility. And if you could get him up to level 4, he would become what I call a normal. He would be a normal person. So that could be done, but it's difficult. You were going to say something?
Oh, it just completely lost me. It was just the word normal. It just
Okay.
we are getting close to our time. Chris, did you have any more questions?
No, I think I asked all my questions. Thank you so much, Jim. That was very thorough. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Jim, is there anything else you
I
would
can
like to
tell you're a
share?
phenomenal engineer.
Thanks for listening to the Approach podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode. Be sure you don't miss what's coming next. We're just getting this practice started. Check out the links below to visit theapproach.net. Connect with today's guest, explore their content, discover more episodes and resources. Until next time, thanks for being a part of The Approach.